What is up, sports fans? Welcome back. It's Fry here for another all AFL edition of the Sports by Fry podcast / YouTube channel. Pretty exciting times. The new AFL season's only about two sleeps away. I get confused because we are roughly 12 hours behind. So you'll be watching this on Wednesday morning, but right now it's Tuesday afternoon in Toronto. Yeah, like I touched on, I'm going to be talking all about the AFL today. Really big 2018 season coming up. I did an entire preview post of the 2018 season on sportsbyfry.com, so if you haven't checked that out already, make sure you hit up the World Wide Web and give that a view. I also this morning posted my AFL Fantasy preview for 2018, revealed what my team's going to look like. There'll be a few little tweaks and changes over the last couple of days as the final teams drop. But yeah, the season's here. Massive off-season. Couple of big stories that I'll touch on throughout the off-season. But yeah, I'm going to dive into basically how I think 2018 will unfold, who I think will win the flag, who's going to be a potential breakout player, things to look out for, and so on. Cool. Diving right in, like I said, over the weekend, I did a massive preview of what to expect in season 2018, what teams I think are going to contend. The long and the short of it is that I don't think the needle will move too much in the off-season. And by that, I mean that the teams that you saw in the finals and competing for a spot in the Grandy last year will probably stay around that mark. So your Geelong, Richmond, Sydney, Adelaide, the Giants, Port Adelaide maybe. I think those type of teams will stay up towards the top of the ladder, and they'll be the ones that you've got to look out for. The cellar dwellers like your Gold Coast, North, Fremantle, Carlton, Brisbane will probably languish around that bottom spot there. One of the biggest moves, if not the biggest move or story of the off-season, was Gary Ablett going back to Geelong. There was rumours that he was going to retire. I wrote a piece a couple of months before he actually went back to Geelong saying that I thought that's where he'd end up, so it makes sense. I mean, he used to play for the Cats. He played close to 200 games there. He's a former Brownlow medalist / club best and fairest. So, yeah, I think Gary will have a massive impact back at Geelong. It'll be interesting to see what kind of role he plays. I'd love to see him just be a small forward and pinch hit in the midfield and kick close to 50 goals, but I don't think that's the way Geelong are going to play him. They're going to push him into the guts. Fingers crossed he can be injury-free. The last couple of seasons he's been banged up for the Suns, and that really, took down his value and took a bit of a gloss off just how amazing a player he really is. So, yeah, if the Cats can get him healthy, they boast probably, let's be honest, the best midfield in the comp with the likes of Dangerfield, the Selwood boys, Mitch Duncan. That's going to be a lethal outfit. I actually have Geelong as the team to stop in 2018. I think that they're going to go all the way. They've just got the right balance of youth and experience. They've got some of the best players in the competition holding down key positions. Tom Hawkins could really win the Coleman if he gets his kicking boot on, and the Cats have some massive blowouts. He could pile on bags of 6 or 7 plus and then really challenge for the Coleman. Down back, they've got a pretty solidified unit. I love the looks of Tim Kelly, the mature age recruit from the Waffle. I think he'll, have a big impact for them, whether it be all 22 games or just throughout the season. I think he's a good recruit. So yeah, Geelong are probably my pick to win it all next year. That being said though, Adelaide and Richmond are still really poised and really well set up to make it back to the Grandy. I think that the Crows are just ahead of Richmond, although the Tigers had a massive pre-season. Richmond touched up North Melbourne and Essendon in the pre-season, although North Melbourne and Essendon aren't going to be winning the flag. So if Richmond really wants to make another Grandy and, potentially defend the flag, then they're going to have to bring their A grade against, the Crows and Geelong, and when they play those heavy-hitting teams, it'll be interesting to see if they go about it the same way that they did against North and the Bombers. So I think that those top three almost in a class of their own. I think the next tier down, you've got the likes of Sydney and the Giants. The Swans seem to play finals every year and have done so since I was wearing diapers, so it wouldn't be surprising to see them back near the top. The Giants, I don't know, there's something about them. I can't put my finger on it, whether it's a lack of big name stars. Look, I know that they've got Josh Kelly and Jeremy Cameron, those guys, but yeah, I don't know. There's something about them. I don't think that. I feel like they're going to be the team that hovers around the grand final mark in the top four for, has done for the last 2 years. Will probably do so for another 2 or 3, and then we'll just start to drop off. I'm not a believer. Sorry. Turning attention to the middle of the top 8 and the lower half, a lot of people are tipping that the Bombers are going to rise up and challenge for a top 6 spot. Like I said, I don't see it happening. I think Port will be there. They'll probably finish around the 5th or 6th mark. They got some massive recruits this off-season. Tommy Rockcliffe, Jack Watts, Stephen Motlop, Jack Tringove. I think all those guys add to the depth of what is really a boom or bust year for the Power. If they don't make the finals or a top 4 push or really contend, then it might be almost curtains for Ken Hinkley, which is tough to say because they've been good the last few years. But yeah, they need a breakthrough, or it might be time to change directions of where they're looking. Rounding out the top 8, I have the Bulldogs getting over their premiership hangover and rebounding in 2018. On 9th, just on the verge, and could make finals depending on the health of their key forward, is the West Coast Eagles. They're probably the team that's been talked about most this offseason, and all the experts have them sliding down and missing the top 8 and, really falling out of the race. While I think that the loss of Priddis and Mitchell and those experienced guys will no doubt hurt them, I still think that they're an exciting group. They're capable of playing some finals footy. So, like I said, I do have them missing the 8 at the moment, but I think they'll be around the similar mark they were last year, hovering around 8th or 9th, maybe even pushing into 7th if they can get Josh Kennedy healthy and on fire. Just missing out behind the Eagles, I've got the likes of St Kilda, Collingwood and Hawthorn all kind of clumped into one. Yeah, I don't think that they're going to push up the ladder too much. They could shock the world and climb into the 8, but I just think that the teams above them are too good. The Saints are probably the ones that I like the looks of the most. I mean, you can never doubt Alistair Clarkson and Hawthorn, but yeah, St Kilda's building something. I really like the looks of what Alan Richardson and the Saints are doing. Outside of that, I don't really see any of the bottom 5 teams or 6 teams, shocking the world and making the finals. Carlton are looking solid and Brisbane are also improving, but it's not going to happen. If someone would jump out of the bottom 10 that I had to make the finals, I'd probably put my money on the Coasters or St Kilda. Hawthorn are a sleeper pick and everyone's popular pick to climb back into the 8, but yeah, I don't have as much faith. Watch out though. I mean, Clarko can do some stuff. He's one of the best coaches in the league, but yeah, I can't see it. It's not happening. When it comes to the wooden spoon, you've probably got to pick North Melbourne, maybe Gold Coast. Even though Stuart Dew looks like he's going to turn around the culture there, they'll probably take a couple of years to see the benefits of it. North they lack star power. They've got exciting young guys, but not enough to win enough games. My boys, the Freo Dockers, are probably in for another tough slog this year. We don't have a key forward that can kick us a winning score. We do have some really superstar midfielders, Lachie Neale, Nat Fyfe. I love the looks of Andrew Brayshaw, the youngest future club captain, number 2 pick from last year's draft. But with the exception of that, there's Freo still lacks a few pieces to really push their way back up the standings. Now that I've gone through and talked about where I think the teams are going to finish, it's time to talk about a few different players. I have Lance Franklin as the Coleman medalist, but he looked invincible this pre-season. He wasn't meant to be playing in the JLT. He was meant to have both games off, recovering from off-season surgeries, but he looked unstoppable. So fingers crossed we can see Prime Buddy and he pushes back up towards 100 goals. That'd be really exciting. The rising star pick, I've got the Brisbane young gun, Alex Witherden. In the back half of last year, he just looked polished off that halfback flank, really accumulated a lot of quality touches. So with Luke Hodge next to him, I think he'll learn a lot from the former Hawk champ and really benefit from them being in a more competitive situation this season. The big one, the Brownlow medalist, I tipped Paddy Dangerfield to go back. Like I said, Geelong's going to be right up there, if not in the box seat to win it all. So someone from that team's going to get a lot of votes. I'm not worried that Selwood or Ablett are going to steal enough quality votes off Danger. I think that he's just going to take his game to another level, look back in peak Brownlow form like he was in 2016 and upset Dusty by 1 vote. Although a couple of roughies. I think Bontempelli could put a good year together. He's probably the guy that I have just outside the clear-cut favourites in Fife and the works to make a real push. Zach Merritt could just explode this year and become the best player in the competition. So he's another dark chance, I think. There's not too much else that I really need to talk about. I think this year is going to be awesome again. The race for the top 8 will probably come down to the last round like it has done for the last couple of years. Looks really exciting. With all the stars of the competition, knock on wood, healthy at the moment, I think that they can, continue to excite and keep the 2018 season really, captivating and, down to the last game, which is, what we want from a good footy season. No one likes a ton of blowouts. Transitioning my focus to a little bit of a dream team or AFL Fantasy perspective, we are just 3 days away from another awesome season of AFL Fantasy football. I'm really excited. It's going to be a challenge trying to watch it and stay up to date with everything that's happening from the other side of the world. I think when I was looking earlier that lockout for most rounds will be at about 4:30 a.m. my time, so I'm not looking forward to setting my alarm for those early days. But, if you want the car, you got to do what you got to do. Heading into the season, I'm pretty optimistic about my team, the large fries and Coke. Last year was a bit of an off year. I think I finished around the 6,000 mark. I missed on a few players. A couple of injuries hurt me. Steph Martin and Rocky, I don't like to point fingers, but trading them in at the wrong time definitely hurt. So I'll be looking to bounce back and hit the ground running right from round 1. So let me break down my team for you and where it sits at the moment. In defence, I've gone with the ever-reliable Rory Laird. I think he'll probably be the top-scoring defender, unless Lockie Whitfield gets DPP or another DPP person slots the number 1 mantle. But yeah, I think Laird will be the person to beat. I've also gone with Mitch Hibberd and Jake Lloyd as my D2 and D3. I'm a little bit worried about them. There's no clear-cut best second defender choice or third defender, but I'm paying top dollar for those guys who will probably average in your 90s, pushing 100. So that might change throughout the year. I might have to give one of them the flick and I might be tempted to pick someone else, but that's who I've got at the moment. After them, I've gone with 3 rooks in the form of Caulfield, Norton and Sam Murray. Caulfield seems like a lock. Norton had a good JLT in pre-season, so I'm pretty solid and happy with him. And Sam Murray is going to play from round 1 and he looked pretty impressive in the pre-season as well. On the bench, I've put Tom Doherty, you know who I mean, there for now. I really want Alex Pearce on that pine. I think that he'll play all 22 for Freo and average around 60, so he might be a good heartbeat, an emergency to keep. However, I just can't really seem to squeeze him in at the moment, so it might change before lockout on Friday night. So at the moment, he's not in there, but he keeps flicking in and out. And then I've got Jeremy Finlayson kind of taking that D8. Down to the mids, there's absolutely no way that you can start this year without Tom Mitchell. I can understand maybe not having Zach Merritt or Dangerfield if you want to save some money and spend up in other areas, but Tom Mitchell is a bona fide star. There's a reason he's a fantasy pig. He will probably, barring anything crazy, have the top average this year. So you need Tom Mitchell in your team. Well, I've actually excluded Dangerfield, who will, according to me, be the Brownlow medalist from my team for the first time in about 4 years. Instead, I've gone with Zach Merritt as my second most expensive midfielder. I think, like I said, that he could be a Brownlow chance and really explode this year. Even if I'd have tipped the Bombers to slide and not be as dominant, I think that he will take his game to new heights and could become a fantasy pig before the year's out. Matty Crouch, in the second half of the year, he was an awesome pickup for me. He was my captain in the last round when he had that 150 against West Coast. So thanks, mate. Hopefully you can keep up those awesome numbers. Lachie Neale takes out my 4th spot. That's chopped and changed between Dane Beams, Neale, and Tommy Rockcliffe throughout this year. However, the latter 2 that I mentioned seem to be dealing with niggles, and Beamer's injury history isn't great. So I've stuck with my Freo boy Lachie Neale, who will probably average, if not over, close to 110 this year. My 5th spot on my midfield took a long time for me to lock down. I was tossing up between Luke Parker, Paddy Cripps, Lockie Whitfield. I actually asked the traders on their podcast to rank them, and all 3 of them picked a different player. So it was coming down to splitting hairs. At the moment, Luke Parker sits there. I think he's got a higher ceiling than Lockie Whitfield and Paddy Cripps. However, that DPP of Whitfield keeps tempting me, and I might make one change before the end of, or before lockout hits on Friday night. The midfield bench is interesting. I've got Banfield at the moment, but I'm not sold on his job security at the Dockers. I don't think that he'll play all, well, it'd be ambitious to think he'd play all 22, but I just don't like, I don't know, another gut feeling. I don't like him there. I might keep him there and then flick him out because he is named for round one. But I've also gone with Nick Holman, and Dom Barry's been in and out of the side. So Banfield could get the axe before lockout, but because he's playing round one, it might be a foolish decision. With the rucks, I'm staying pretty vanilla. I've gone with Sam Jacobs and Max Gawn. It's safe. It's a smart decision. Steph Martin can't guarantee that he'll be the solo ruck all year, and I don't want to start with him and then see Archie Smith or someone pop their head up in round 7 or 8. It'd make me want to break my computer. On the ruck bench, you can pick whoever you want. Darcy Cameron's in everyone's team, but yeah, R3 and 4 doesn't really matter, let's be honest. Finally, the forward line. This is the area that's troubled me the most over the pre-season. I've had about 48 different men chopping and changing inside of my forward line. I had Buddy in there for a while. I love the look of Blakey Acres, but both of them haven't made my final squad. Instead, I've chosen Billings and Isaac Heaney for my first 2 forwards. Both players are in the top 5 in ownership. They look set to average close to 100, absolute guns. Pretty happy with that. This is where it gets interesting though. So at F3, I've got Christian Petracca, who could continue to average around the 70s or 80s and really hurt me, or he could just explode and average close to where Heaney and Billings will probably finish around that 90 to 100 mark. I really think he's got that much upside. The Demons are poised to, make the finals. Fingers crossed. Those poor Melbourne fans have had a bit of heartbreak for the last couple of years. So, yeah, I think that Petracca, if Melbourne trends the way that they are expected to, they're going to go up, then I think Petracca will be a large beneficiary and put up some massive numbers. Next up, I've got Alan Christensen over Cam Rayner. I literally had Cam Rayner in my side this morning and have swapped him out for Bundy Christensen. Even though Rayner's probably going to play every game or have a lot of chances to put up numbers, I don't see him as a big accumulator. He's more of a X factor and excitement machine, can impact the game with a big tackle or a big mark and goal or run, kind of like Stephen Motlop does. And Stephen Motlop hasn't had the greatest AFL Fantasy career. So for that reason, Rayner's out. The last 4 forward spots, honestly, it's like throwing darts at a dartboard. It'll come down to team selection for me. At the moment, I've got Bailey Frisch, whatever his name is, from the Demons. Had a really good preseason, looks pretty impressive. Liam Ryan at the Eagles is at F6. And then on the bench, I've just got a couple of Giants in Keefe and Giles Langdon. So it'll come down to team selection for me to determine who's in that final F8, F7 spot. But yeah, they'll be cheap, that's for sure. So yeah, that's how my team's looking to start the year. Who knows the last couple of changes I'll make over the next few days, but I'm pretty concrete and set with about 27 of the 30, I think. So yeah, there might be a few minor changes, but the large fries and Coke are hopefully going to take out the grand prize winner car, or at least finish in the top 100. I'd like a nice hat. That'd be good. I'm running out of hats. A few guys who I don't have in my team, just quickly, that I think should be in your calculations. If you want to go for Dusty Martin in the midfield, that could be a masterstroke. He seems almost like the set and forget type of player outside of Tom Mitchell to have in your midfield this year. The reigning Brownlow medalist had some big scores last year and looks set to blow up again. He's in the prime of his career, so barring injury, I think he'll be a top 6 or a top 8 midfielder. Another midfielder who probably hasn't spent enough time in teams and really deserves to be included in the conversation for those top 8 mids is Adam Treloar. As it stands right now, less than 10% of teams have him, and I think that he could really be the best Collingwood player this year, and he averaged 111 the year before last, 108 last year, so he's one of your uber premiums. So if you have Adam Treloar on your side, that could turn out to be a good pod moving forwards. A few noteworthy guys who aren't in my side. It makes me queasy to look at my fantasy team and not see Tom Rockcliffe in there. I just can't do it. I'm sorry, Rocky. After the pre-season that he's had, he's meant to be 100% healthy and fit, and he's around certain starter for round 1, but he's not in the large fries and coke right now. That little calf niggle that he's had, and over the last couple of years, his injury concerns have really hurt me. So I'd rather not start with him and then get him later on than have him burn me. Also, I've opted not to have Jaeger O'Meara, another guy whose injuries just deal a big no deal for me. He hasn't missed a beat this pre-season and looks set to light the world on fire, but we've been saying that same thing for years. So fingers crossed the dude can get his injuries in order and have some healthy knees, ankles, hips, shoulders, whatever else is bothering him, but he's not in my team. Finally, just touching on the rucks, I think it'd be foolish to start with Brodie Grundy, especially if Mason Cox really is going to play as many games as Nathan Buckley wants him to. I wrote a piece over the pre-season for the Dream Team Talk boys about Grundy's averages with and without Cox, and it's close to 25 points difference, so less, I should say. So Cox really does have an effect on Grundy, so you'd be foolish to start with him in Classic. Don't do it to yourself. Steph Martin is another one who's mentioned as, a popular pick in the rucks, but without a guarantee that he'll be the number 1 ruck, which he very well could be, but we just don't know. So I've opted to keep him out and get some more sleep at night. That pretty much wraps up all the fantasy news that I have. We're just days away from the new AFL Fantasy and AFL, the proper season, getting underway. I'll probably still keep writing about the AFL on Sports by Fry. I'll also be doing my weekly piece with the Dream Team Talk boys about a few guys who might be flying under the radar. That'll probably start in round 2. I won't be doing one this week, obviously. Like I said, this week on the website, I've got mock draft day coming up. So Thursday, I'm going to do my updated NFL and NBA mock draft. All the madness that's happening in the NBA has made, the race for the bottom of the ladder pretty interesting. So make sure that you check out my NBA mock draft. In the NFL, a couple of trades between the Bills and the Bengals, the Jets and the Colts have shaken things up a little bit. So I've got to update my picks. Make sure that you check out those pieces as they appear on sportsbyfry.com. Finally, one last thing, I want to give a quick shout out to Dan Power, who helped me create the artwork that feature at the end of this video. If you haven't already, go and check out Daniel Power on YouTube. Subscribe to his channel. I'll put a link in the bio so it's easy for you guys to find. And that wraps up another Sports by Fry episode. AFL season's nearly here. Fingers crossed my fantasy team can, get off to a flyer. That'd be a great feeling. It's going to be interesting trying to follow the sport from afar, but I'll give it my best crack. I don't think that the Dockers can cause a first-round upset against Port Adelaide, but stranger things will happen. Fingers crossed. Until next time, peace.